Hello and welcome back to the Faith and Culture Show. I'm Catherine Camp, your hostess for the show. And we are going to do, as usual, dig into some difficult topics that are happening in our culture today. Not only our culture, but all over the world. And that's because I'm bringing back Mr. Mark Sutherland. He is a political commentator, podcaster, film producer, and so much more. He's really on top of things. Anyway, we really need to get him on because here in America, we are just not always getting it. So for my frequent viewers, please stay tuned. Bring your pad and paper and pencil because we're going to talk about many different topics that might touch on something that somebody you know, maybe your neighbor, family member, that they're confused about what's going on right now, and you can help them. We're going to talk to Mark Sutherland. If you've seen our interviews before, he is over in the UK, so he is getting a completely different perspective than what we are, and we're going to talk about that too. So let's get him on. Hey, Mark, thanks for coming again.
Not at all. Lovely to see you. Thank you for inviting me. And I just want to say that is why I love your intro to your show. I really, really enjoy it every time I come on. So a big shout out to that. It's great. Well done.
Thank you. All right. So you just came back from Israel, about a month ago or so? And it's been a busy time. You are in the midst of just trying to live your own life and educate people over there, as well as whoever sees your podcasts from on this side. And there's just so much going on. So where do you want to start? We can start in Israel. We can start about, what do you see is wrong with the most, I guess the majority of Americans, and why they are not waking up?
Well, it's a huge concern to me on both sides of the pond, and it's just the state of the church. And yes, thank you. I had the privilege to be in Jordan and Israel a few weeks ago for 10 days, doing some filming out there, meeting people, and just having the privilege to then spend 4 or 5 days in Jerusalem, which was an absolutely incredible experience. And we all know that on the 7th of October 2023, Hamas, an Iranian proxy, attacked Israel to do the worst pogrom attack on the Jewish people since the Holocaust. And the reason why I say an Iranian proxy, because as you are aware on your side of the pond as we're speaking, a few days ago, Israel launched a preemptive strike against Iran in a most incredible, audacious way. And the reason why I'm saying they have done a preemptive strike, and even though it's out there, it's in the alt media on your side of the pond, it's even in some people that would call themselves Republicans who have a voice, is the fact that when they say, well, Israel has attacked has attacked Iran. Well, Iran has proxies, Hamas. They did have Hezbollah. Israel dealt dealt with that. They also have the Houthis, but more importantly, Iran has been attacking Israel through its proxies for a heck of a long time. And then it reached a point of the concern, and we need to deal with this, that, of course, under the Obama regime, where he was trying to negotiate with Iran in regard to Iran walking towards, in regard to uranium, etc., then being able to create a nuclear bomb. And as you are most probably aware, they then have a Shiite ideology, which means that if they can then bring in the end of the world, then their Mahdi comes back, and then they go into a different life with 92 Vestal Virgins or whatever, and the whole world is blown up. But they really don't care, because they feel as though they've gone to a better place. I am not being sarcastic. This is their ideology. And Israel, who has been constantly threatened with this, along with other countries in the region, even though they may not say, the Saudis may not say it, the UAE may not say it, these other countries are also, I believe, very quietly grateful that Israel is taking this action. Now, let's just remind ourselves as well, Qatar is also a huge funder of terrorism, and has been backing Hamas as well. They then run Al Jazeera, the television outlet, the mouthpiece. But Qatar, and you, I know, we were just talking before we came on air, in regard to the series on education that you've been doing with a friend of yours. Qatar has been funding the universities, as you know, on your side of the pond. And over here, we're also very aware that on the 7th of October, Catherine, within a number of hours, there was also, there was big protests saying, Israel, just be calm, show restraint. It took them 3 weeks before they actually went into Gaza. So that's just painting a picture. And then, of course, on Friday, last Friday, the attack is, or Thursday night, the attack is then launched on Iran as they are taking out the rocket launching ballistic missile systems. They have ballistic missiles. They have missiles that fire from the ground, that go into space, and then they come back down to Earth, bringing all the destruction that they do. That is at times difficult for the Iron Dome, David Sling, and another defensive process that they have to then combat. But it has been miraculous, and very sadly, Tel Aviv has been hit, and Israelis citizens have died. But it also it's been miraculous. We won't go into certain details, because the last thing is that we want to do is to give the enemies of Israel any joy in knowing certain things, and knowing some of the sadly some of the bombs that have landed in Tel Aviv. But this is the situation. And then we've got the Western press going, well, how can you launch this? We need to show restraint. And that's why I laid out that Iran has been creating a ring of fire, which is Hamas, which is Hezbollah, which is the Houthis, around Israel to attack it. And of course, it calls America, and maybe the West, the big Satan, and it calls Israel the little Satan, and it promises to wipe us out. And within the Hamas charter, it is there. It's very, very clear. The privilege of going over to Israel was to, I mean, in some ways, politically, it's very, very, it's very complicated on one level. It's quite incredible that before Candace Owen goes, it's an apartheid state. That's the biggest load of rubbish I've ever heard in my life. And every other thing that she comes out throwing against it is rather shocking, but there we go. But the fact is that it needs our support. This country that has 10 million people in it is fighting on all of our behalf within the Western countries. Now, that is what's going on. The unity is incredible. And the unity that came about after the 7th of October, I think we have discussed this before, that right up to that, there were protests about judicial reform and all that by the Kaplan group, I think influenced by a book by Amy Kaplan, Left Wing, people then not wanting to then have a state for the Jewish people. And that is their historical homeland. You and I open our Bible and there it is. It's the historical homeland. There's always been the Jews since the Second Temple was destroyed. They've always been there. So this is the situation we are in. They need our prayers. And we need, if we know anyone over there, I'll just say, be in regular contact to pray for them. Now, what we've got immediately within the alt media is going, well, this isn't our war. No, we don't want to see, Israelis aren't asking for us to send boots on the ground and all the rest. And before people say, well, this is like Iraq War 2. No, it's not, because people may not be aware of this, but the Israelis dealt with the Iraq nuclear proliferation schemes that they had, and then they dealt with Syria under Assad in 2007. The other one was within the 80s. Now, so this is the third time on behalf of the world that they are addressing something. And the important thing is, this is an existential threat to them. Now, in America in 1962, I think it was the Cuban missile crisis, and Americans weren't too happy by the fact that Russia was then installing missiles that could fire into America on their border there within Cuba. And then the rest is history in regard to how close that went to nuclear proliferation. And this group, this small nation that's the size of Wales, it's the size, I'm just trying to think, excuse me, I can't think of the small state that is the equivalent
Israel?
of.
Are you saying Israel is the size of something? New Jersey?
Yeah, that's it. Size of New Jersey. And to put it in context, Iran is 75 times the size of Israel. They have to fly 1,500 miles just over to the Iranian border to even hit Tehran. I think it's or 1,500 kilometers, it may be just under 2,500 kilometers to then hit. Come on. This is not a war against the Iranian people, the beautiful, proud Persian people and that incredible heritage. It's not a war against them. It is a war against the Iranian regime of the mad Ayatollahs. And I think when you and I have discussed, when we get called conspiracy theories, Catherine, we have to remember one thing here, right? In 1979, Ayatollah Khomeini was in an apartment in Paris. There was an overthrow of the Shah. There was a link between Islamism and the left. Doesn't that sound familiar in regard to what you're seeing on the streets of your incredible country? You know, when people are going from the river to the sea and they don't know what river they're talking about, and they don't know what sea they're talking about, let alone maybe even knowing where the country is. They have no understanding whatsoever of the history. So just quickly, there is nothing like boots on the ground. And as you know that with your travels, there's nothing like it. You then get, but I'm privileged to have traveled a heck of a lot, and I pray that continues while before Christ's return, because there is nothing like seeing it with your own eyes and boots on the ground and feeling it. And when you're going into the old city and Jerusalem and all the rest, it's incredible. But the one thing, there's a number of things I take away. But when you take away people that are proud of their country, proud of their culture, they're prepared to fight for it. That the fact that when they call it a nation, when they say that I am a nationalist because I'm proud of my nation, and they're proud to say that, I think there's something that I know my nation could learn from that. Even though there are many patriots on this side of the pond, it's just that when we stand up and say we believe in our nation, it's just you're called far right, racist, and all the rest of it. But it really is very, very boring. So I think there's a lot of lessons that we can learn from that. I mean, something culturally that you can relate to in America, when you see these brave young men and women who are called up into, the IDF, into the police forces and all the rest, and they're walking around with their AR-15s, etc., strapped to them while they're going shopping, going about their life. There's something incredibly comforting about it, which is, we will fight. We're not gonna. We've had enough. We're not going to take this. But the key thing to say, of course, on the 7th of October, Israel did not start this war. They did not start it, and Iran has been one of the biggest, or is the biggest promoter of terrorism across the world. So this is where we are at, I think. And again, I'll just quickly say we have to be responsible in what we are reporting. Is one of the the biggest problems that we have, because we live in this world that wants an instant reply. We've just got to sit back and make sure we've got the facts and talking. And this isn't a game. This isn't a video game. Last April, in 2024, Iran sent a barrage of missiles over, and and of course this is happening again, because the other big thing, just quickly, is not just about getting rid of their nuclear program. It's the fact that they have this huge ballistic missile program and other missile programs as well, and this is a concern. And of course, whether you like him or a bit like Marmite, whether you like him or loathe him, Bibi Netanyahu has been talking about this for many years in regard to Iran. And also, to his credit, who is an opposition leader to him, Natalie Bennett, has also been talking about that. And that just illustrates the unification that is going on within that nation. So there's a lot more to say in many ways, Catherine, about the visit. There is no doubt about it. When you're walking on the Mount of Olives, when you are in the Dead Sea, when you're going to the Sea of Galilee, and then you're going to Mount Nebo in Jordan. We went to Petra. You're then walking within biblical lands, and when you open the Bible, it gives you a totally different perspective, to be honest. So that's all I can say on the one hand about that. And I would honestly say, yeah, it's been a life-changing experience, and especially with the war that is now happening. You see, when we say it's the size of New Jersey, Israel at its widest point is only 85 miles wide. And when people criticize it, it's like in the 6-Day War, they were within miles from Cairo, which is a huge distance as well. They then gave the Sinai back for peace, with Syria after that, negotiating land, going back, etc. Of course, in 67, they then had access to Jerusalem for the first time in thousands and thousands of years, and then giving Jordan the Dome on the Rock and being in charge of that and all of this. The political scene is extremely complex, that people, through the Oslo agreements, that people have left these incredible lions and lionesses that are now fighting for their country's existence and freedom. So I think the subject, its history and recent history, is extremely deep, and we do have a responsibility to get to grips with it very fast. And I'll just give you another example, and please don't think I'm being clever as because I do what I think we all should do, which is to find good sources, Catherine, to listen to and to be educated. So if you take in 1929, there was an awful pogrom where 70 Jews were murdered by their Arab neighbors within Hebron at that time in 1929. They were all living peacefully. But at that time, leading up to that assault, the Grand Mufti then, who was given that position by the British, I'll just own up on that, who was a total anti-Semite that wanted Hitler to deal with the Jews. Once he'd dealt with the Jews under the final solution in Europe, he would then come to the Middle East and deal with it there. And the Grand Mufti stirred this situation up, and saying that the the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is the Dome on the Rock, and saying they're going to go on there and do an awful thing. The Jewish people are going to do that. And then it stoked up this hatred, and this pogrom came about. Well, what's interesting is, and I've skirted over a heck of a lot of history there, but the Al-Aqsa Mosque was raised in conversation. Hamas and the Al-Aqsa flood. Hamas, in their attack of the 7th of October, also initiated that kind of language as well, going back to history. And we need to know our history, because when, again, going back to education, when we're trying to educate young people, and in many ways, I don't think we can talk to a screaming crowd of going from the river to the sea, because you just cannot have a conversation with them, to be honest. The whole thing of debate seems to have gone. But history is important, and knowing facts is very important. Catherine, sorry, I've just spoken for 22 minutes or 20 minutes and come at you with that, but sorry.
That's okay. And that's the things that people don't understand. That's very educational. I also want to go back and revisit what you said in the beginning about it's a religious war, a spiritual war, because Islam, that is what they're waiting for. They feel like if they can create enough chaos and war all over, doesn't matter with who, mostly the little Satan or the big Satan, right? That's what they call us. Then it will, their ultimate Mahdi would be ushered in. And, they do talk about in their materials, they do believe in Jesus, but they see him as a prophet, and they feel like, yes, he will come back, but he's going to come back to kill Christians and Jews. And that's what they believe. And so, but they believe that they can usher it in by causing war, by the whole world at war. Now, we know in the Bible, it does say that nations will be rising up against nations. It does say all of this, and it does say that these are the end times. But it says nothing about Jesus coming and killing Christians and Jews. That's completely opposite. He is going to, it will be, justice will be served. And that's why being under Christ is the most important thing we could possibly do. And I don't think we can ignore that, because one, they are doing what their religion tells them, or what they believe. it says. And as Christians, or even Gentiles, people who don't understand what's going on, and they just see as Israel such a problem. And it's really not. It's because they're being attacked all the time. But we also need to understand they are, they're not going to give up. Iran, the Persians, Islam is not going to give up, because they believe they're doing this for God, for their God. And that takes it to another level.
It does. And the other thing is that it's called the East and the West for a reason. And if people don't know the incredible Raymond Ibrahim's work, then they need to find him and learn avidly, because Raymond talks historically about this. If you're saying that up until the 7th century, I think in Egypt, I think Raymond's talked about the thousands of churches that used to be in Egypt. Of course, we look at Constantinople. The reason why it's called the West is because when Islam then spread at the scimitar, at the sword, they then began to push out Christianity. They pushed it out. So we don't necessarily have time to talk about the Crusades and why. And of course, that all gets thrown at us. And then if you look at, again, encouraging everyone to get a world map out, but if you then go to Spain and you go to northern Spain, and the fact that this is where Islam all went up to. It was Catherine of Aragon who ended up marrying Henry VIII. It was Catherine of Aragon. There was this sort of last sort of holdout in regard to Christianity. The northern Spain then pushed back over time. We then go back to America, and I never get this who was president at this time, just after the 1800s, and then you have the Barbary Wars, where Muslim pirates, Islamic pirates were then attacking American ships. They were attacking other ships. But it was asked, well, why are you attacking us? We're a new nation. We've just been formed. We've had this little fracas with the British. We then have a constitution by 1787, and we're our own nation. And they say, well, in our book, the Quran, it says that you are an infidel, so we will attack you. Now, these things were going on, and I would say to people, learn about this, and also the concern that you should have as Americans, that in Texas, in Plano, I believe, there is like a sort of an Islamic city. In other words, they're using our democracy and our civilization, our society, our laws against us. Now, we are addressing Islam, which means submission. We are not addressing individual people that would call themselves Muslims because they come from a particular geographic state. And are we then classing everyone the same? No. But if they believe in an ideology that says if you leave that ideology, you then become an apostate and have to die, then we have a few problems. And our laws, our culture, what we would say as the West, is based on the Bible. It's based on the Bible, and we have a Bible where we call it the Old Testament and the New Testament, and they are both relevant, and they're very relevant to what we're discussing now. And then there's going to be future events. And Catherine, you've said it, and I may go there and make myself profoundly unpopular. I personally believe that we are going to go through some very, very rough times. And there is a school of thought that thinks that we will be taken out of here. I do not believe that. And my own thought, whereas it says, I think in Matthew 24, verse 28, and then after the tribulation, I will gather people from the four corners. Now, I have just, unfortunately, most probably got completely struck off from various mail lists. I will be unfriended from a load of people. Well, that's my beliefs.
Yeah.
And then what it does, if people think that they are going to leave here, I believe that it's meant that people are sitting on their laurels and not addressing what is coming. This isn't a bus ticket. Our faith is not a bus ticket to go, all right, it's fine, we'll just carry on and then off we go. No, we have a job to do. And unless people know Jesus as their Lord and Savior, with what's coming down the line, which I believe what the Bible makes very clear, they are not going to get through this. And you've already alluded to that Scripture says that there's ethnos v ethnos and all of this kind of thing. We are in it's a tough time. You're seeing you've just seen it over the weekend where these No King marches, big adverts sponsored by a young girl of the Walton family, who is one of the Walmart heiresses. Yes, it's out there.
Yeah.
And this whole thing of stirring up marches. We've seen the anti-Semitic attack of two beautiful young people working for the embassy, Washington, D.C., killed. We've then seen the awful attack in Boulder in Colorado, where a man thought it was perfectly acceptable to chuck Molotov cocktails because Jewish Americans were protesting about the fact that the hostages that Hamas taken, there are still a number of them that we believe, maybe 22 that are still alive, are being held. And in October, that would be for 2 years. And they were protesting quietly about this. We're seeing this. We're seeing the rise of anti-Semitism on this side of the pond as well. So,
well, you're seeing anti-Christian on your side as well. I mean, we are too. I think that they have, it's been successful here where they have pushed back Christians to the point where Christians just want to be good little, I guess, quiet people and go about their lives quietly, never speaking up, never saying anything to anyone about anything unless they're in their little tiny Bible studies. And then they feel like they've done their duty. Well, I have news for you. You haven't. And I'm so tired of that. But I'm seeing what's happening to you where you can't read the Bible in the street. You'll get arrested. And we've talked about this before, but would you, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I'm just
not at all. There are
so much.
not at all. There have been cases of street preachers being arrested. There's also been cases where those street preachers have won those cases for the unjust of being arrested. We have also had someone arrested, taken to court because they were praying outside an abortion clinic, etc. There's been another case where a lady who not young in years, I'm not putting a disservice, it's fantastic. She's out there holding up a sign outside an abortion clinic as well, saying, I'm here to talk if you want. And that individual was arrested, I think prosecuted as well. We've then got if you go and pray outside an abortion clinic, not out loud, there was a lady that's been arrested, I think, for that as well, because what they've done is put an inclusion zone around that. And these are not people shouting and screaming. These are people just quietly praying. No, we have our nation. It has a veneer of establishment Christianity. It still has a number of people as sincere Christians. Also culturally, they respect it. They understand what the country is built on. But I would say that establishment veneer of that is going very, very fast. And while I'm having a go at everyone, I may as well throw in the fact that, of course, with the fact that in regard to, still, the fact that the church, so many people church fell for the COVID debacle, and then being vaccination centers and all this kind of thing. It really is where does it stand at the moment? Politically, we are on every single wrong side of the argument in regard to Israel. We are on the wrong side of absolutely everything. 2 weeks ago, we had our excuse of the Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, stand up, just slam into Israel, bloody blah. And then we've just had two, Ben Gvir and Smotrich, two Israeli politicians. They've just, because they then, one of the accusations of being violent settlers and all this, they then have decided to have sanctions against these two people, bloody blah. It's just virtual signaling, and the UK and Canada and Australia are doing whatever they can to virtual signal each other out. One says this, the next one, whether it's Penny Wong or Albanese on Australia, or Mark Carney, the excuse of a Canadian Prime Minister, turning around and, having a go at Israel. And the fact that within France as well, Catherine, Macron, as they want to call for a two-state solution, all the rest. Now, that is really, really interesting. The two-state solution is off the table after the 7th of October, within the Israeli mindset. The two-state solution is off the table. And what people have to understand, so the kibbutzim, like sadly kibbutzim Berry and Summer and another place, they had people from Gaza crossing over the border, coming to work in their kibbutzim for a number of years. That enabled them to work out where families lived, who had guns, who had dogs, what were their movements. And that's why when 4,000 people came over the border, that's why the attacks were so vicious and all the rest. And there is one of the worst, I'll just say it, it's beyond words of literally putting a baby in an oven. There are the rest. In many ways, I would actually, if people don't want to hear about those things, well, I'm not saying it for effect. I think we do realize we do need to know what has gone on, the barbarity and the hatred. And it isn't beyond the realm of possibility to actually think that until that day, those people from Hamas, and then also the other residents of Gaza who then followed them to either take bikes and take goods out of the homes that have been absolutely smashed to pieces by Hamas, just to what they did. And for some of them, it might have been the first time they'd ever met a Jewish person. And on that day, there was a very infamous phone call of a young terrorist then phoning up his parents, celebrating the fact that he had killed a number of Jewish people. It's a mindset of evil that it's so difficult to get your head around, but it's to understand that under UNRWA, under the money that's put there via the UN, and then in regard to schools, books, we had this off air, this whole thing about education, and that if you look at the kind of books that are in the American education system, is awful to then push an ideology of, well, I'm a boy, but I feel I'm a girl and I can transgender and all this kind of thing. The hatred against the Jews, and this is then embedded for many, many generations, and this is the ideology that we are then dealing with. And I urge people to look at the history, to know the fact that Yasser Arafat, head of the PLO, he was a relative. The Grand Mufti there was his relative. They were related, and Arafat is from Egypt, but that's another thing. It's really important we know this stuff. Sorry.
It is. I just wanted to slow you down here because you said UNRWA, and many people do not know. You are in this. You are into politics. Many people don't understand what UNRWA is. Can you define that and let us know, please?
United Nations Relief Agency, Relief Workers Agency. Now, I think I've just got one word wrong there. So in 1948, when Israel came about as a nation, when that was declared on May the 14th, in May 1948, immediately the nations around attacked Israel. And they then, after I think just under a year, they were then victorious. Now, very soon after, of course, Catherine, at that time in war, there's a displacement, and people that the other Arab states around there turned around and said to the Arabs that were living within the border of Israel and the Israelis, the Jews then were asking them to stay, and I think 150,000 stayed, and now there's about nearly 2 million Arabs, I think, living as Israeli citizens with all the rights of being an Israeli citizen. They fight in the IDF and all the rest, and they are in the land. And then this whole thing of the Nakba, that if you are in a war, you've been displaced. And what was happening is the Arab countries turned around and said, well, look, just leave your homes, come out for a few minutes, for a short period of time. We'll deal with these pesky Jews, and then you can go back to your houses. Well, that didn't happen because the Jews were victorious in that situation. Now, this whole thing of UNRWA then starts, and what it is, it's being a refugee relief agency. The UN has two. It should only have one. It has two, and one of them is permanently to create a permanent refugee people group. Then they now call themselves Palestinians from 67 up to that point, Arabs. Then they turned around and said this whole thing of the right of return. And an amazing Israeli lady called Einat Wolf has written a book extensively about that and talks extensively on this. In war, which is of course awful, but if you have been defeated and if you have lost land, then you're not going to return there. And these people think that within that they will always go back. And let's just say this quickly. There was a two-state solution. There is a two-state solution that they then came up with. Ariel Sharon then took and gave the Palestinians Gaza. That was that was to create a two-state solution. It's Gaza. In 67, the Israelis won that land. There had been awful action of Intifada 1, Intifada 2, blowing up bomb buses in Israel and all this kind of thing. Can you imagine, as a mother, me as a father, can you imagine that you would take your children to school and you would put one child on one bus and one child as another bus, so that if one bus blew up, they'd still have a child alive?
Wow.
And this is what the Israelis were dealing with. So by 2007, within Gaza, the Hamas had got rid of all the opposition. They had taken over, and as as you know, they had created all this tunnel system that's bigger than the London Underground in certain tunnels, especially in the Philadelphia corridor, I think, from Egypt. There were tunnels that would go under there, and Egypt's going, oh, no, nothing to do with us. You could drive trucks through certain tunnels. And it meant that's why it's been so difficult, where Hamas could pop up anywhere, and they use the civilians as human shields, Catherine. But the thing with UNRWA, it's about this whole thing of the right of return. And no other refugee group in the world, after the Second World War, I'll give you an example, millions of people were displaced. They then either went back to their countries or maybe somewhere else, but over a certain period of time, they then assimilated and started new lives. And this is the thing where UNRWA encourages this to perpetuate. And I'll just say it, the whole thing of the two-state solution, it is gone. People have to understand that the whole thing of you would have these kibbutzim, these collectivized, socialist-minded kibbutzim within certain parts of Israel. That's why I say politically it's really, really interesting and mixed. And in 1973, I believe, under Begin, they got their first sort of conservative prime minister. But this is just quickly, and this relates to what President Trump has been going through, dealing with your judges. And it's the same over here with certain things, where they got very annoyed when Bibi Netanyahu won, and he said, we're going to have to do some judicial reforms. And the reason why he said that is because judges would have a heck of a lot of power within Israel, and they are of a left-wing thinking and of a mindset, but also they are of a mindset that they have power, they have control. And in fact, they then can bring could be roadblocks for the actual prime minister of the country actually doing what he needs to do and what he wants to do. Now that, in regard to America, is very familiar to you at the moment, when if you want to deport MS-13 gangbangers, then you should get them out of the country. And then suddenly, oh no, they should have all their full rights and all the rest, let alone going back to all the disruption that you're seeing at the moment in California, etc. So look at how that is happening around the world. It's like when we voted for Brexit, and there's judges wanting to overturn that or say we might need to have another referendum. That's another subject completely on another day. But it's just seeing how the enemy is using those same tools around the world. It isn't just in America, it's around the world. This is what we are all this is what we're all dealing with. And the church needs to wake up. The church just needs to wake up.
Yeah. This is, like you say, Mark, this is global. And this is, and we always say, well, they are doing this, they are doing that. It is people that we call the globalists. If you take a look at the meetings that they have in Davos with the World Economic Forum, with the World Health Organization, people who have set up these organizations to take over the world. And they are very wealthy billionaires. And really, there are only a few. There are a handful. I think it's 12 or 12 people. And then it trickles down to their little minions who they give, they pay. And they own huge corporations that own other corporations that own. These are huge conglomerates, and it trickles down, but they all have to behave. I mean, you have what is it? This something international settlements, the Bank of International Settlements. You've got everything, and this is
the Bilderberg group that's just been happening, and on number one on their agenda is depopulation. So doesn't that sound a little bit familiar?
Yes, And so, you know, it trickles down, and then the United Nations is part of it. This is one of their tools.
Mm.
And so when we see this happening, these riots that pop up, these are planned events called color revolutions, or
Absolutely.
trying to have color revolutions. These are they that we always talk about. And this is wicked. These are demonic people who do not believe in the God of the Bible. They believe in a satanic, evil being that gives them power, and the only thing they care about is money and survival. Because they don't believe in a God of the Bible, it's a survival of the fittest attitude. And guess what? You're in the way. I'm in the way. And there are more of us than them. So the more people who wake up, the more we can push back. And part of waking up is not buying into their system. One of my favorite people is Catherine Austin Fitts. And I know you've heard of her. And she will tell you, don't opt into their system. Stop buying things from Amazon. Stop going to Walmart. Stop and buy from your local people. If you live in the UK, buy from those farmers. My goodness, they are so under attack over there. And just like here, but they're more, what we see happening in your across the pond in the UK is going to happen here if we don't bang on the pots and pans and make
it's already happening. And I think, and this is what is also frustrating. And let's just say it, because people think, right, well, President Trump's in, that's great, I can just sit back and leave it to him. Well, let's throw this one in. Peter Thiel, Palantir. Peter Thiel, part of Elon Musk, part of the whole sort of PayPal supergroup. Now, Musk then, and you'll have to get my friend Carl Tigrib on to discuss this, his ideology of, well, let's go and, build something on Mars and all of this kind of thing. It's then he has a technocratic mindset. It's technocracy. Patrick Wood, I must get you to talk to Patrick Wood as well, the expert on this, the Trilateral Commission. Well, the Trilateral Commission, a reason why Khomeini then went back to Iran, I think we could lay a lot of that at the feet of the Trilateral Commission, formed in 1973. But Catherine, the key thing is of Palantir, when people go on about, the beast system is to come, well, if they open their eyes and look at the control grid that's already here. Now, over here, they want to talk about digital ID and all the rest. They then are trying to pass a law that will give them even more right to then dip into my bank account and do this and do that. That is what's going on. It's about constant control. And I'll leave you, this other little nugget, which I've talked about. The Prime Minister of the UK, of this country, used to be a member of the Trilateral Commission. He stepped down in 2022. I think he joined maybe 2017, 2018. I'm not making this up. I also would like to know why there seems to be chatter about him flying to America and having meetings with Eric Holder, the Attorney General under Obama. What is going on here? We need to open out. We're not fighting flesh and blood, but principalities and powers. But going back to Palantir, pay attention. Patrick Wood's the expert on this, also with Carl. Pay attention to the digital grid that they are trying to build. It's already out there, and pay attention to that. And also AI, that the amount of that America, Trump's going, well, we need to be number one in that.
Yeah.
I understand it, because the Chinese are not going to stop. Other countries are not going to stop. And in the big, beautiful bill that they're just trying to get through the House over there, I understand that there are no checks and balances in regard to AI within America. There's no checks and balances, and people have been to the Speaker of the House to have this conversation. My friend John Haller explained that to me. This is concerning, and you're passionate about this. That's why I'm privileged to have this conversation with you. All we can do is keep going and sounding the alarm. That is your job. Your job is to do that. If people don't want to listen, then the blood is on their hands. If you don't tell them, then the blood is on your hands. You know, in regard to a watchman on the wall.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to do. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes. And this, I'm glad you said that. This is the one world government. And this is what the book of Revelation tells us. This is the system of the beast. It's the beast system that will be in control. And we are right on the precipice. And we need to continue to push back, because we want to understand what this is. If you're not aware, you are going to end up with the mark of the beast eventually. So you cannot. And like Mark said earlier, you mentioned, you know, that what the Bible says, that there would be great tribulation in the last days. And then he would come and gather his people from the four corners of the earth. We don't know. And if people are out there debating, I'm sorry that other people calling themselves Christians are canceling you out, Mark. I have taught, you know what? Young earth, old earth, pre-trib, post-trib. It's not a salvation issue.
No.
So people need to stop it. And this is exactly what the enemy wants. The enemy wants us divided at every single sector of you know, where our paths cross or we disagree. He wants to see us all fractured up. Jesus said, a house divided against itself cannot stand. So we need to stop this foolishness. There are majors, and that's not one of them. Majors is Jesus died on the cross and he resurrected. Jesus is God. We are sinners. We need salvation. Those are the majors. All this other stuff is minutia. And so we have to stop it. If my point is like yours, Mark, is if we have to be here through the tribulation, we better be ready. We better recognize the beast system. We better recognize they've already built in Abu Dhabi, I think, or Dubai, the interfaith complex. It's there. It is there. It's Christian, Judaism, and Islam. It's a beautiful center. Beautiful center. And I know you've actually attended these interfaith meetings here in the United States. And
I went to the Parliament of World Religions. I've also done research at Burning Man as well. I've also been to the Lucis Trust over here. And we need to go to some of these places. We need to find out what's going on. But Carl was recently at a NATO meeting in Ohio. This is really, really important.
Do you say Carl? Do you mean Tigrib or
Tigrib? Yeah, Tigrib. Yeah.
I always mispronounce his name.
No,
yes,
no, but Carl,
wealth. Yes.
Yeah. Well, he was down there. If people, you know, in the show notes, put a link to his important book, because it is very, very important.
Yes.
I mean, I think what you bravely said is absolutely right. No, it's not a salvation issue, but the problem is, to me, respectfully, it's led so many people to, I think, just sit back, and then if as a friend of mine says, if he got $1 for every time someone says I'm still here, then he'd be a multimillionaire.
So and so we need to be aware. This is the beast system. Don't run around thinking in the United States, you do not have to get a digital ID. There are other forms of ID. I don't know what it's like in the UK, but they are really trying to trick people here. You've got all of these the mayors and different people from different cities. I happen to be in a small town in Texas when all of this went through and you couldn't travel anymore if you didn't have this. And they were talking about, oh, well, there are going to be lots of delays. You're going to be held up. You know what? You can get a passport and they have a little card now here in the United States. It doesn't have your digital ID. Guess why? Because you can take your own picture. So you don't have to go and get them to do the biometrics on your face. And don't look into the cameras at the airport. It is optional. And they will make you feel weird. They'll hold you up. One guy marked on my ticket. He was over there. And I was like, what is he doing to my ticket? At TSA. And I have every right. You have rights. You don't have to buy into the system. Now, Mark, you're right. It's going to get harder and harder and harder. And that's what the Bible says. You won't be able to eat. And you won't be able to do business unless you take the mark of the beast. Be ready. Be ready not to take it and to starve and to have to be wise. Jesus said we have to be wise as serpents and gentle as doves. So let's be wise about this and stop living in fear. Just like you said, go about your business and be educating others. These are important things. These are the last days. We don't have time to sit back and say nothing or, oh, it's not my business. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
It is.
Anyhow, okay, sorry about my diatribe there.
No.
My rant.
It's not a diatribe. It's not a rant. It's the truth. So, and thank you so much for saying it.
Well, I just thank you for being on the show. Thank you for reaching out. I did interview your friend, Dr. Harper.
Yep,
Yes.
Matthew. Yeah, brilliant.
Yes.
He's just interviewed Mike Huckabee, Ambassador Mike Huckabee. So I'll get that link to you. So he's just in, and Matthew needs our support. We need him in the White House press pack on a permanent basis. Yes.
So those are all good things. Just tell us where people can catch up with you and keep up with you, because you have so much knowledge politically. My show's a little bit different. It crosses some of the things that you touch on, and people.
Well, that's very kind. That's very kind of. Thank you, and it's very kind of you, and it's great to be on again. And let's do it again. I need you on my podcast. That'd be great. But people can find me YouTube channel Mark Sutherland at Mark Sutherland 5161 the Sutherland Report. On Twitter, it's Sutherland X Sutherland Report. So find me on there. I've got to hurry up and revamp the website, and that's where you can find me. There are plans, so I'd appreciate I won't go into certain details, but I'd appreciate your prayers. We have much to do, but also to use this medium in which to inform. But Catherine, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark. And yes, we will talk again. I love hearing what's going on over there and what God puts on your heart, because it's going to educate someone or many out there. And that's all it takes is one. And we've done our job.
Yeah, we have. Thank you.
All right. God bless you.